Mitch's music. This morning we are going to do a beginner lesson on how to make your fingers more flexible. This was a question I saw on Reddit, and it was basically just asking, hey, I've been playing for a couple of days now. My fingers aren't stretching out. How do I make my fingers more flexible? So, today I'm going to talk about a couple of different ways that you can approach this. But the number one way, and what I would say in general, is I think that this person specifically said, this is day two. I can't stretch my fingers and things like that. So, what are some tips that I can do? Um, I would say first, it's day two. It takes time. Your fingers are not used to not only pressing the strings, but also just stretching out like they were saying. And there's a lot going on. You've got the coordination between the two hands that we're working on. But this user specifically asked about stretching strings. So the first tip is to try to play in keys if you can, and I'll show you guys a video on how to change keys a little bit later using a capo. But start by trying to play in keys that do not stretch your fingers out. So, like, there are certain chords that don't stretch your fingers out. That would be the D chord, and I'm trying to get to where you guys can see. But anyway, we've got, if you don't know the D chord, you've got your first finger on the G string on the second fret, second finger on the E string on the high E string on the second fret, and then your third finger on the B string. So that's the D chord. So your fingers are all close together right there. Now you may have an opposite problem there, of your fingers touching another string. So when you do have those problems with your finger touching another string, you want to try to angle your fingers forward until you kind of get to where the tips of your fingers are touching the string. All right. And so part of that is finger strength too. And part of the problem with it may not be that your fingers aren't flexible enough. It may be more that your fingers aren't flexible and strong at the same time, because you're building two things right here. So D is a good chord. So in the key of D, you would have the D chord, the G chord, and the A chord as our major chords in the key. Now, you are going to have some minor chords, so depending on your song, that one might not work for you if you're a beginner. But if you are only using the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord, this would be a great key to start with. The G is a little bit of a stretch, but I see the G as being a little bit different, and this is more of a stretch across the fretboard, and only across, because you're only on the third and the second fret. So doing chords like the G chord are easier than, say, the C chord, where you're spreading your fingers across the strings and across the frets. So here I'm spread out over 3 frets. Here it's only 2. And so that takes a little bit less finger strength, even though your fingers are kind of stretched out. So picking easier chords. So you've got the D, the key of D that you could do some songs in, D, G, and A. The key of A that you could do some songs in, A, D, and E. All of those are fairly easy chords to play. And then the last key I would suggest playing in would be the key of G. So you would have G, C, and D. And the key of G, and the reason a lot of people play in the key of G is because it not only has fairly easy major 1, 4, and 5 chords, but it also has fairly easy minor chords. So when you're doing in the key of G, you've got the E minor, which is the sixth chord of the G scale, and then the other most commonly used one is the 2 chord, and that's the A minor. So you've got those 2 chords that are the most frequently used minor chords in a major key. And so G is a great um, key to play in and just slowly work on stretching your fingers. Now, what if you are having a hard time with that C chord, because like I said, it's stretching over several frets. There are several songs like Sweet Home Alabama and 3 a.m. and I mean a ton of songs that you can, even if your song does not particularly do this, you can sub a different type of C chord. Now, so you've got a G chord right here, and instead of going to this C where you're stretching your fingers out over 3 frets and over several strings, you could always go from this G chord to this C chord. So all I'm doing is I'm taking these 2 fingers that are on the A string and the G and the E string, and I'm moving them to the D string and the A string. And now I've got a C with an add 9 right here. So this note is not necessarily in the chord. So if you can't see what I'm doing, the B string right here is not necessarily in the chord, but it doesn't sound bad and it actually works. A lot of songs use it. So like Sweet Home Alabama uses something similar to that. Or 3 a.m. So you can sub the chords to play with any C. So that would work with pretty much any C, especially if you're strumming. And so the main tip is to find keys that are a little bit easier to play so that you can work on your finger strength and you can work on slowly stretching your fingers out a little bit. But even with those examples, it's going to take time. So just enjoy the journey, calm down, find some songs that you can play. I'm going to do a video tomorrow about how you can use a capo to change the key to play in these easier keys. And so it's going to take a little bit of time. Start with those easy keys, get comfortable with them, work on your strumming while you're doing that. Because, like I said, there's a lot going on. You've got your finger strength up here, plus the flexibility and stretching, and you've got to coordinate this hand down here. And so you got a lot going on at once. So work on one skill that you would like to work on at a time. So like just tackle one thing at a time. So when you are working on strumming one day, your chords up here, you may have a lot of strings that you're not hitting or muted because you're not pressing down hard enough. That's okay, because you're not working with making your hand, like every note of your left hand, sound wonderful. You're working on your strumming. So when you go into your lesson, when you go into your practice time, decide what you want to work on. If it is your chords and stretching your fingers, then I would suggest playing each string individually. Make sure they all make a sound, and do go through each chord in the song that you're doing. And even if you are learning a song and the thing that you want to work on is strumming that day, I would still suggest starting that way. Just make sure that your fingers are playing those. You can get all of the strings to sound. And then once you actually start playing the song, don't worry about it anymore. So many beginners um, hinder themselves by stopping every single time they make a mistake. So don't be one of those beginners. Don't don't stop every time you make a mistake. Know what you're working on. So like if you are working on cleaning up your chords, then sure, stop. If you're working on strumming, then just keep strumming. Don't worry about the sound up here. This will come. All right, guys, I hope that helped you out. I hope you enjoyed this video. I am going to be releasing a course coming up for beginners, and it's also going to give you access to all of the tab that I have, plus one-on-one help with me um, a couple of times a month, and I'll be letting you guys know more information on that over the coming weeks. But be looking for that info, because before the end of the year, I'm going to have a deal that I'll never have again on getting into that for the first 100 people. And not only will you get access to everything I already have out there, but the course itself will be tailored just to you. That's why I'm limiting it to only 100 people, because I want to give you my full attention. So be looking for info on that a little bit later. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions about chords, or if you have another question completely not related to this video, or if you have a request. Always looking for new songs to do. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Don't forget to bring your capo tomorrow.